The Baltimore Ravens were defeated by the Cleveland Browns 24-22. Now, if the Browns win in this game, they keep their playoff hopes alive. They improve to 7-6. Not only do they keep their playoff hopes alive, but they're still riding the thick of things of trying to win the AFC North. So they still have a shot of not only making it into the playoffs, but also winning this division. Now, Baltimore, they fall to 8-5. And not only that, but Lamar Jackson left the game early with an ankle injury, which is something that you don't want to see. And with Lamar going down, Ravens fans are probably asking themselves, JT, is it time for us to panic? And oddly enough, I gotta say no. And I know what I'm about to say may sound crazy, but I still believe that the Ravens are more than capable of being able to make it to the playoffs without Lamar Jackson. If Lamar Jackson is out for the next 2 to 3 weeks, I still feel like the Ravens can at least win a game or two and still keep their chances of winning this division and holding on to their playoff spot alive. Because I know the Ravens are a team that has been hit heavily with injuries this year. Heck, even before the season started, they were down their halfbacks, their running backs. So the running game was already a big concern going in, despite the fact that you had Lamar Jackson. Who else were you going to have to carry the load at running back? On top of that, your defense has now started to get depleted. Your defensive line, you're down a couple of starters. Your secondary is down your two best corners. Marcus Peters got injured earlier on this year. Then you just recently lost Marlon Humphrey. Like, this is a Ravens team that now is starting to have those injuries start to pile up. But despite that, this is a team that does have a really good head coach in Coach Harbaugh. I think that Coach Harbaugh is going to figure out to find a way to win at least a game or two and find a way to get this team into the playoffs, because you have 8 wins. If the Ravens win 10 games, there's no way that I think they miss the playoffs. Now, will they win the division with 10 wins? I don't know. But I do think that 10 wins for Baltimore would be good enough to get them in. Now, their last remaining games are really tough. You got to play the Packers. You got to play Cincinnati for the second time this year. You got to play the Rams. Then you play the Steelers to close out the year. I still believe that the Ravens could at least win 2 out of their last 4 remaining games. And it may sound tough, and you may say, JT, how can the Ravens do it? I don't know. I don't really know what to tell you in terms of what the Ravens can do to win those games. All I know is that I think that the Ravens could win at least 2 of their last 4 remaining games and find a way to hold on to their spot in the playoffs. I do believe that this Ravens team is very well coached. And even though their defense has taken a lot of hits in terms of injuries, I mean, this defense still has played fairly good considering how many key starters they have been without this whole entire season. And although this hasn't really been the Baltimore Ravens defense we have been accustomed to seeing out of them over the last couple of years, this is still a very good defense, because you got to look at how many key guys they're without. And they're still playing at a pretty solid level. So for Baltimore, I still think that this team is more than capable of being able to get into the playoffs. A lot of Ravens fans are going into panic mode because you have all the injuries you have. Then you have Lamar Jackson, who went down with that ankle injury. But Tyler Huntley is still pretty solid. I think he's able to win a couple of games for Baltimore, because, I mean, he can still execute the offense in the same way that Lamar Jackson can execute the offense. I don't really think Baltimore has to change too many things. Now, is he the same level of Lamar Jackson? I'm not saying that he is. All I'm saying is that Baltimore, in terms of what they want to do offensively, nothing really changes. Baltimore already was a team that was run first, pass later. So with Tyler Huntley, you still have that mentality. You're not going to change who you are offensively because of Lamar Jackson not being there, because your identity was running the football. On top of that, you can still run design quarterback runs with Tyler Huntley. You can still run the RPOs, read options. So pretty much what you would do offensively with Lamar, you can pretty much do those same things with Tyler Huntley. Now, the passing game probably is going to take a hit because Tyler Huntley isn't as good as a passer as Lamar Jackson, but he's still capable of being able to get the job done. So I have a lot of confidence in Tyler Huntley. And I think that the Baltimore Ravens coaching staff has a lot of confidence in Tyler Huntley, because at the end of the day, your defense is still going to have to be able to get the job done, and Tyler Huntley still is a pretty big threat with his legs as well. He's also a really good athlete in space, not the athlete that Lamar is, but he still has pretty good ability to run the football. He probably is a better rusher of the football than the majority of quarterbacks in the NFL are, even more than starters. So you look at Tyler Huntley's mobility, and I know he's not the greatest passer of the world, but the passing game hasn't really been the strong suit for Baltimore this year. Even when Lamar Jackson has been healthy, the passing game hasn't really been all that impressive. So with Baltimore, nothing really changes in terms of what your mentality is. You know, you want to run the football, take as much time off the clock as possible, keep the other team's offense off the field, and keep their defense on the field, which is why I still think that Baltimore has a pretty good shot of making it to the playoffs, even if Lamar Jackson misses the next couple of games with his ankle injury, because they still have their same identity. Nothing really is going to change all that much. Just the guy who is taking the snaps under center. Now, for the Browns, you got a much needed victory, and the Browns are a really talented football team. This team is now starting to get really healthy. This team battled through injuries earlier on this year. They had a couple of guys out, but this team is now starting to get healthy. And as we watch the Browns throughout the remaining 4 games left of this year, the Browns could be a scary outing if they're able to get into the playoffs, because by that point they should be fully healthy. And if Baker Mayfield gets to at least 85-90%, this Browns team is going to be extremely dangerous. They're loaded at wide receiver. Their offensive line is really good. We already know they have the best 1-2 punch at running back in Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. Their defense, fully healthy, is really good. Myles Garrett. Their secondary is really good with Denzel Ward, John Johnson at safety. Like, there's so much talent on this Browns team, and if they're able to find a way to sneak into the playoffs, this is going to be a team that you don't want to play in the first round, because the Browns are one of those teams who could make a run and nobody really expected. And it's kind of like a lot of people forget just how good the Browns are, because the Browns are a really talented football team. If you look at their roster from a talent standpoint, you would say, dang, JT, they have one of the best rosters in the NFL. I feel like a lot of people are counting out the Cleveland Browns just because the reputation the Browns have had over the last 2 decades. A lot of people aren't looking at the Browns for who they are now. If you were just to look at the Cleveland Browns and just erase their name, and you just look at their roster without knowing who this team is, you probably would say, dang, JT, this team is scary. I wouldn't want to see the Browns. I wouldn't want to see this team in the playoffs. Then you uncover their name and you say, wow, JT, this team's the Browns? And I'm telling you, yeah, this is Cleveland. This Cleveland team has a lot of talent. So the Browns, not only do they keep their playoff hopes alive, but they also could win this division from the Ravens. And they pretty much control their own destiny. You play the Raiders, who are going down the wrong path. You play the Packers, the Steelers, and the Bengals. So if Cleveland wins out, not only can they get into the playoffs, but they also potentially could win this division. So when you look at both the Ravens and the Browns, both of these 2 teams pretty much control their own destiny. And back to Baltimore, from what I was saying earlier, I know Baltimore has dealt with a lot of injuries, and injuries start to take a big toll on you around this time of the season, because you don't really have a lot of depth. You're now starting to get down to your practice squad guys who you probably have to move up and activate to the main roster. But pretty much every team that's in the playoff race right now is kind of dealing with a lot of injuries. Now, not to the magnitude of Baltimore missing the majority of their starters, but to the point that, you know, you have to make adjustments, and great coaches are able to win without some of their best players. That's part of being a great coach, is being able to make adjustments, being able to find ways to win games without your star quarterback or some of your marquee players. And for Coach Harbaugh, I think he's going to be able to find a way to at least win 2 out of their last 4 games and get Baltimore into the playoffs. So if you're a Ravens fan, I don't really think you should panic, although this doesn't look like a good loss. Overall, the Ravens still control their own destiny, and if you win at least 10 games, 2 more games, I think Baltimore could get in, and they should get in. Now, will they win the division? Don't know, but I don't think Ravens fans should panic, and I don't know, but I just have a weird feeling that the Ravens are going to be able to at least win 2 more games and get themselves into the playoffs, even though they are dealing with injuries at the last stage of the season. So you guys let me know how you guys feel about the Baltimore Ravens losing Lamar Jackson. Do you guys think that they can still make it to the playoffs without Lamar? How do you guys feel about the Cleveland Browns? Make sure that you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel if you're listening to this on YouTube. And I appreciate you guys for listening to this episode of the JT Sports Podcast.